The next speaker started in his new role as president and CEO of the International Rescue Committee just 3 weeks ago. He has responsibility for overseeing the agency's relief and development operations in over 40 countries and its refugee programs in the United States. David Miliband is former Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom. In 2006, serving as UK Secretary of State for the Environment, he spearheaded the groundbreaking Climate Change and Sustainable Energy Bill, establishing the world's first legally binding framework for reducing carbon emissions. Ladies and gentlemen, David Miliband.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, and good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be in New York with you today to launch Climate Week. You've heard that last year was a record-breaking year for the concentration of carbon in the atmosphere. It was also a record-breaking year for the flow of refugees. One refugee every 4.1 seconds. So we live in a world where there are fewer wars than ever before, but more people fleeing conflict than ever before. My organization, the IRC, was founded by Einstein 80 years ago for people fleeing the Nazis. Our world, the humanitarian world, is being transformed by climate change. And I just want to explain 4 ways in which the humanitarian community is having to rise to the challenge or cope with the challenge of climate change. The first is the sheer complexity of the humanitarian enterprise. I read that in the 1980s, there was about one disaster every 3 days. 2010, one natural disaster every day, 373 across the year as a whole, 69,000 people dead, 300 million people affected by floods. There is a new complexity in the humanitarian enterprise because in many of the poorest countries of the world, we're also seeing the stresses of climate change, often combined with conflict. I don't say to you that climate change caused the Arab Spring, but it's not an accident that 12 of the 15 most water-stressed countries in the world are in the Middle East. Second big change, the flow of migration as a result of climate change, even before the 17% of Bangladesh that is predicted to be underwater in 30 years' time. The flow of migrants around the world is transforming the humanitarian enterprise. Let me give you one example. We used to talk about emergency relief being one type of help, and then long-term development being another. When people leave their country or move within their country for climate reasons, that's not a short-term change, it's a long-term change. So the old division between emergency relief and development has gone. Third big change, the humanitarian community has distinguished itself by its speed of reaction. We in the IRC say we can be at the scene of a disaster within 72 hours. But climate change is helping us or making us think about prevention, not just reaction. How do we prevent the kind of refugee flows that we're seeing and the flows of IDPs? And there's a fourth and final change. The word refugee and the idea of people seeking refuge from persecution doesn't incorporate the idea of a climate refugee. There's no legal status, there's no institutional forum. We're having to update our ideas about the whole concept of the refugee for the 21st century. Let me just finish on the following note. I always used to be distressed as Environment Secretary when people said climate change is too important for environment departments to deal with. But actually, of course, they were right, because climate change isn't just an environmental issue. It's a security issue, as the Brigadier has said earlier. It's a massive economic issue, as we've heard from Swiss Re and from others. It's an issue of justice because of the inequities at the heart of it, but it's also a humanitarian issue for people in life and death circumstances in some of the poorest and most desperate countries around the world. So I don't feel that the humanitarian community needs to learn about the effects of climate change. We see them every day, but we do need to partner with you to respond to this immense challenge. Thank you very much indeed for listening.